So today's question comes from the conflict de-escalation set of decision deck. And here is the question. So a man has been found in the woman's restroom and asked to leave. He said he identifies as being a woman and has every right to be in there. How will you approach the situation? So we have a transgender person appearing to be in the opposite sex bathroom. Challenging, but let's work this through together. Now, I've answered this question before with the Faith-Based Security Network, and my answer got a little bit of criticism. But the first thing I say in this transgender question is that for me, does my opinion matter? If it is a man in a woman's restroom, in a woman in a man's restroom, does my view of transgender matter in that moment when we're trying to de-escalate? So my belief is that I need to remove my feelings and opinions to try and resolve the situation. The second thing that we have to do is we have to listen to the person who is transgender. They are a member of our church. They are a visitor to our church. They are someone that believes in God as of the higher power. We need to make sure that they feel listened, they feel heard, and that we understand their perspectives. That's the second thing that I think we need to do, is we've got to listen to a transgender person. The next thing that we have to do is we have to listen to the person who is then offended. So the card says that a man's been found in the restroom, they've been asked to leave, and they've refused, and they have every right to be in there. So this person who's escalated it and made a complaint has just cause because they feel that they're offended and this person shouldn't be in the restroom. So we have to listen to that person's views and perspective as well. And from my law enforcement days in de-escalation, the first thing we want to try and do is separate these two parties, because no good will come from hearing both sides at the same time. So we've got to listen to the person who is transgender, listen to the person who is offended, and I would argue also remove my views and opinions of transgender. The next thing I would say in relation to this card is that this is an incredibly hard and complex situation. And it's very similar to when I say to pastors when they have someone disrupting their service, are you going to try and minister to them in that moment, or is it best to remove them and then minister to them afterwards? Sometimes they start and say, Simon, well, I'm going to minister to that person. And I say, well, Pastor, will you unpack 5, 10, 15, 20 years of mental illness or hatred towards the church, whatever their view and opinion is, in that time stood when you're delivering your sermon? It's mostly best that we remove this person. I say that story because this scenario is very complex, and it is unlikely you're going to reach resolve in that situation. Some people say, well, Simon, I would send a transgender person to a unisex bathroom or non-sex denomination bathroom, some might say. But then that person might say, well, I don't want to go to that bathroom. I want to stay where I am. So it's a very, very complex issue. What I often say with these decision decks is, as you come across these cards which are challenging, I really encourage you to talk to your church leaders and understand the church's guidance. One of the reasons why I say that is I'm a big fan of security culture. Everything we do in safety and security is driven by our security culture, which in turn is driven by our church theology, driven by our lead pastors or reverends, priests, their views and opinions and their interpretation of scripture. So when we know the transgender issue is becoming more common in our society, I'd really encourage you to reach out and find out what would be their view on this. Do they say yes? Do they say no? What guidance would they give you in this situation? So tough scenario. I'm going to put it back on the screen one more time because it is a very, very hard scenario. But those are some of my views and opinions. I would love to get your views and opinions. Have you had this issue in your church where a transgender person has perhaps been asked to leave a bathroom where someone hasn't recognized them as being allowed to be in there. If you haven't, when you go through a scenario, what do you think your response would be? How would you end this conflict of these two people at loggerheads surrounding should they be allowed in the restroom or not? So tough question. Would love your views and opinions. Please leave a comment wherever you are listening or watching. But for now, you stay safe, you have a blessed day, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.